Are you guys as excited as I am that Star Wars has finally put a female hero front and center? That Disney was brave enough to take the first step and prove that women could be heroes too. So I saw this article by the LA Times a few days ago, and just looking at the title, I thought, oh, here we go. What is this, the 100th time that we've had the first female hero in a franchise or prominent female character, as if they haven't existed for decades? I swear, in the past decade, every popular franchise that has existed has been subject to articles like this, where the reader is supposed to pretend like we're not aware of the franchise's history, which obviously the writer of the article isn't. So, the writer, Tracy Brown, who is like the perfect encapsulation of who you would imagine wrote this article. So it says Ahsoka Tano crashed into Anakin Skywalker's life as his newly assigned Padawan apprentice in 2008's animated Star Wars The Clone Wars. She changed Star Wars forever. It's a little bit of an overstatement, but okay. Much like her master, the teenager was reckless, impulsive, stubborn, and didn't always follow the rules. She was also the first female Jedi protagonist that audiences got to see in action on screen in a franchise that until pretty recently held lightsaber wielding users of the Force in the highest regard. I mean, there have been other female Jedi. They may not have been front and center protagonists, but they still existed. Star Wars Ahsoka, which premiered Tuesday on Disney Plus, is the next chapter in the character's 15-year legacy. That is kind of a long time, and will similarly break new ground on the live action side of the galaxy far, far away. Starring Rosario Dawson, the series boasts Star Wars' first non human title hero, as well as a core cast primarily composed of women. Both are representational milestones and examples of how Star Wars has become much more inclusive compared to when the original film premiered in 1977. Oh, I didn't realize that we have aliens living among us and that they were begging for representation. Ahsoka is also the first Star Wars series built almost exclusively on a foundation established in animated Star Wars shows. Though shows like The Mandalorian have introduced characters and references from established Star Wars lore, including from animation, Ahsoka, created by head writer Dave Filoni, George Lucas's protege, is a continuation of a story that started in animation and stars characters who were originally animated. And I actually appreciate that. If you haven't watched my review of Ahsoka, I actually really enjoyed the first two episodes, and I like that they really stick to the continuity established in Star Wars Rebels. The series is an acknowledgement that some of the franchise's richest and most meaningful storytelling has long been happening on television, particularly in animation. That Ahsoka's representational wins do not feel as momentous as they appear on paper is also a credit to the groundwork laid out by animated shows like The Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels. I agree with that. As imaginative as the vast galaxy introduced in the Star Wars films has been, their vision for who could be the hero has been a bit more narrow. It's been over 45 years since the original film, now officially known as A New Hope, which introduced audiences to Leia Organa, a princess who broke the mold with her courage and proficiency with a blaster. But as beloved and influential as she was, she appeared to be one of very few women fighting in the rebellion and was more of a supporting player to her twin brother Luke's hero journey. It's no secret that until recently, Star Wars has had a lackluster history when it comes to representation, both in front of and behind the camera. That's because representation isn't the point. It wasn't until the third trilogy of the nine film series known as the Skywalker Saga that the central chosen one meant to save the galaxy was a woman. The sequel trilogy, which launched with 2015's Force Awakens, was also the first of the core film series that featured a more diverse cast, including more than a couple of women in prominent speaking roles. Okay, so the chosen one thing, I don't think Rey was ever meant to be a chosen one. The disjointed plot of the three sequel films really backs that up. Like the whole dyad of the Force they introduced in The Rise of Skywalker, I really doubt that was a concept that what's his name? JJ Abrams came up with when they made the first movie. Because the second movie was all about she's nobody. She doesn't have to be someone important in order to be the protagonist of the story. In terms of having a more diverse cast, I mean, what do you have? You have Ray, a white chick. You have Finn, who's black. Well, Lando was part of the cast in Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. And then you have what's his name? The guy who plays Poe Dameron. Can't remember his name, but he basically looks like a white dude. So I don't know if that was bringing diversity to the Star Wars protagonist. For those who have been following Star Wars television at the time had long been immersed in the heroics of a young female Jedi trainee. Over the course of the Clone Wars 7 season run, Ahsoka battled on the front lines, learned from other Jedi, including Anakin and Master Yoda, made friends, and suffered losses. Ahsoka was more than just the girl. She was a girl that happened to be a Jedi in a series that also showed women as politicians, mercenaries, teachers, daughters, and warriors. Which, if you want to see a similar story, go read the Clone Wars era Dark Horse comics. There was a number of story arcs where the blue Twi'lek Jedi Ayla Secura was both fighting and trying to bring her old master Quinlan Voss back to the light side of the Force because he had been spying on the Sith on behalf of the Jedi, but he had started turning toward the dark side, like actually turning toward the dark side. So, in a way, that's very similar to Ahsoka and Anakin, but you wouldn't know that from this article because this person probably very much like Kathleen Kennedy pretends like the expanded universe material doesn't exist. And if you have read expanded universe material, you know that there were plenty of stories that had non-human characters who were the focus of the story, had female characters, had Jedi, Sith, Mandalorians, bounty hunters, politicians, all that stuff. Joining Ahsoka in her series is Sabine Wren and Hera Syndulla, two characters originally introduced in Rebels. The four-season series followed the close-knit ragtag crew of the Ghost, who were fighting back against the oppressive Galactic Empire even before there was a formal Rebel alliance in the years preceding the events of A New Hope. The Ghost crew included a couple of Jedi, Kanan Jarrus and his Padawan Ezra Bridger, but Sabine and Hera were just as formidable and indispensable to the story. A skilled combat pilot, Hera was one of the leaders and the heart of the crew whose commitment to the cause was second to none. An explosives expert, Sabine is as much an artist as she is a warrior. Ahsoka, now a grown up ex Jedi, also appeared and worked alongside the Ghost crew at times. Why did they exclude Zeb? I mean, he was part of the crew before Ezra. He was still part of the crew at the end of the series after Kanan had died and Ezra was in a different galaxy with Thrawn. He also appeared at the end of season 3 of The Mandalorian, I believe. Like at the very end of that episode. He was one of the Rangers of the New Republic, I think. So he appeared in live action before Hera and Sabine did. So it's weird that she doesn't mention him in this article. Ahsoka, Sabine, and Hera helped shatter the Star Wars glass ceiling by showing that girls were just as capable as lightsaber wielding Jedis, ace pilots, and weapons experts as any boy named Skywalker. They also showed that there should be room for more than one girl in every Star Wars story. Though there was nothing expressly stopping people of any gender from dreaming of being a Jedi or Mandalorian before these shows, it was still meaningful to actually see that representation. It also meant a new generation of Star Wars fans would never assume that women couldn't be warriors or pilots from the start. I mean, if the new generation of Star Wars fans didn't assume that from the start, it's just because they haven't like engaged in the Legends material, and other generations of fans who were into the Legends material would also not assume that women couldn't be Jedi or Mandalorians or whatever. Plus, from the color of their skin to their head tails, Ahsoka and Hera are visibly different from the average human of Earth. That further negates any argument about what Star Wars heroes have to look like. I don't think anyone argued what Star Wars heroes have to look like, but let me finish this real quick. Because despite the diversity of its wider fandom, Star Wars, especially in the live action realm, has had a history of being subject to racist and sexist backlash from some viewers who cannot understand that women and people of color can thrive in the galaxy far, far away too. So, okay. First of all, Ahsoka, Sabine, and Hera did not shatter a glass ceiling unless you have only watched the movies and the animated series. Nor did those series prove that there could be more than one girl in a Star Wars story. Um, it's funny because she even mentions here there was nothing expressly stopping people of any gender from dreaming of being a Jedi or a Mandalorian before these shows, and yet she wrote a whole article pretending like it's a novelty concept. I already talked about that, and then this whole thing about what it negates any argument about what Star Wars heroes have to look like. Nobody said Star Wars heroes have to look a certain way. If you've only engaged in the Disney canon of Star Wars, then what you've seen so far is simply an expansion of the Skywalker saga. So it wasn't Star Wars saying that only males can be the protagonists or only white males can be the protagonists. It was very focused on the Skywalker family. So you had the original trilogy with Luke Skywalker, Leia Skywalker, and Anakin or Darth Vader. You had the prequel trilogy focused on Anakin Skywalker, and the sequel trilogy, even to a degree, had remnants of the old plot lines. So you still had Luke Skywalker, you had mentions of Darth Vader, and then you had Ben Solo or Kylo Ren, whatever his name was, who was the grandson of Darth Vader. And then of course the other stuff like the Mandalorian, Clone Wars, Rebels, again was all expansions of what we've gotten so far with the Skywalker saga. So there was never a barrier saying you couldn't be a hero. It was simply that they focused maybe a little too much on this one plot line. So if your complaint is they focus too much on this one family and the events surrounding them, I agree. But to say that there haven't been prominent female heroes or prominent alien heroes in Star Wars, again, this is an article written by someone ignorant of the franchise for people who are ignorant of the franchise. I mean, the line where she says, Star Wars has had a history of being subject to racist and sexist backlash from some viewers who cannot understand that women and people of color can thrive in the galaxy far, far away too. Uh, there's not racist and sexist backlash from viewers. There's backlash against poor writing. And why it's perceived to be racist and sexist is because those writers will take their minority character creations and use them as a shield to justify their poor writing. When people make valid complaints about very poor storytelling, the writer will simply say, "Oh, well, I created this new black female character or whatever. So obviously you're sexist, you're misogynist, and that's why you're saying you don't like my story," when really your story just sucked. Poor quality has been the running theme of Star Wars since Disney took over. Bob Iger himself recently came out and talked about how Star Wars and Marvel have been diluted and how they've become lower quality and how it's a stain against those two franchises, how he needs to make changes. Now, unfortunately, at least to the public, he said the changes being made are more in terms of money being spent and not on creative talent, which is the real problem. But still, it's no secret that Lucasfilm has not been doing well in the past decade. And it's not because fans are racist and sexist, it's because incompetent writers, instead of improving their craft, instead of admitting that they didn't do a good job, but telling the audience that they'll try better next time, simply call people racist, sexist, misogynist, which doesn't help the audience and it doesn't help them. It's not going to make the franchise better by creating more division among the fans. This article is for stupid people. So I guess I'm stupid for reading it, but let me know what you guys think in the comments. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, I would appreciate it if you'd hit that like and subscribe button, as well as the notification bell so you never miss out on a new video. Thanks for watching.